This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. This is episode 137. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Strozinski. On today's episode, we've got a ton of news and notes. We have a big injury that took place at Backlash, as well as what's going on with Raw and NXT in the WWE Performance Center, and a possible outbreak of a COVID virus. And where did Drew Mack want to go before coming to WWE? We got the scoop on all of that. Of course, we're going to review Backlash, and we're going to talk about the biggest topics and trends in the wrestling biz going on right now. And doing it with me, as always, he's the one, he's the only, he is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
What a beautiful week of professional wrestling, highlighted by the new Intercontinental Champion. First reign ever with that belt, AJ Styles, in a classic 40-minute match with Daniel Bryan. Kicked off a great weekend. Then we head to Backlash, which was unbelievable. Good pay-per-view. Then you had the fourth episode of The Last Ride with The Undertaker, Raw, SmackDown, NXT, AEW. Man, it was an amazing week. And then we haven't even yet to talk about Randy Orton and where he's going. So for me, I enjoyed this week of wrestling. But remind me, I do have a general complaint about when I sat down and I watched both last night, NXT, then I taped AEW and watched it. I have a complaint. So something that can be done a lot better, because I'll tease it. Some of the matches are not living up to the hype, living up to the standards of the DOC.
I love it, and I love it some more. Of course, we're going to get into your thoughts on what took place on Friday Night SmackDown between Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles. It was a fantastic match. I do want to table that, and I want to table the talk on Randy Orton for right now. I do want to get into our Backlash review, and we're going to kick it off with the Apollo Crews-Andrade match. Apollo Crews ends up defeating Andrade via a pinfall to help retain his title. I think we've got some good storyline booking here for both these guys. I'm going to touch on what's going to probably happen with Apollo Crews in the news and notes segment. I like what we're getting out of Andrade, and it looks like there is some dissension and there is some friction between Andrade and Zelina Vega's little stable here. So I like what we're doing here. I like the loss. I think it plays well for storytelling purposes.
Absolutely, man. I think it's good all the way around to see Apollo Crews take the next step forward.
Bayley and Sasha Banks hang on to defeat Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss via pinfall, as well as the Iconics, to retain their tag team titles. Sheamus defeats Jeff Hardy via pinfall. And as this match played out, you ended up texting me at the very, very end. And you said something, and I think it's very pivotal. And you basically said that Jeff Hardy is now enhancement talent. Please explain.
Okay, you now have a feud that potentially, because you got to remember how the setup went. It's a returning Jeff Hardy. He cuts a promo a couple weeks back where he says, I'm back. I got to make the best of this run. So it kind of indicates that this guy's going to get a push. Now Sheamus comes along and you get into this whole angle that we talked about, bringing up the past. And now you start to see, okay, this is Sheamus, this is Jeff Hardy, who really deserves to get over. And in my mind, what's best for business is Jeff Hardy, because of the fact that there's so many good feuds he could get into. Let's say, for example, this is his last year with the company, and you say, okay, he's got to put in some work. Now you put him into a match with Sheamus, and Sheamus comes out the victor, and you realize, oh, this doesn't really necessarily mean that Jeff Hardy was going to get this grand push into titles, into big main event matches, because in my mind, Jeff Hardy is main event. This guy can still bring it. You could have feuds with AJ Styles to bring up nostalgia. You can do a bunch of different things with Jeff Hardy. Now, is Sheamus worthy of a push? Absolutely. Got the look, battle-tested. Absolutely. I can't knock WWE for pushing Sheamus, but not at the expense of Jeff Hardy. So for me, it signals to me, this loss, that Jeff Hardy is now going to be used similar to the Dudley Boys when they had their run, that he's been talked to. He said, look, we're going to put you in these matches, but we're going to highlight you in a way that's going to put over other talent. And that's just what I believe at this moment.
Yeah, I kind of see it similarly. And what I think it's going to come down to and what's going to probably happen is I think Jeff Hardy's already made up his mind on where he wants to go. I don't think he wants to be part of WWE. I anticipate him going to AEW. And I think WWE knows that. And what happens is WWE isn't going to risk their superstars. We're not going to build you up at the expense of one of our guys. So what I think is happening here is you've got Jeff Hardy now facilitating that enhancement role where he'll be the guy who is a bit of a name, but he's going to go out there and he's going to be the guy who's going to end up getting squashed by other talent because WWE is not going to risk losing somebody that they have under contract for a guy who might be on his way out. Asuka ends up taking on Nia Jax. This match ends in a double countout. I think this was a really bad finish. I'm not sure where you sit on the fence here, but I feel like this was a bad finish. You have Nia Jax who has this stop and start push. Asuka's the champion. We know that we're building to Asuka versus Charlotte. This match ends in a double countout. So are you trying not to diminish Nia Jax, but at the same time not put Asuka over? This seemed like a really convoluted, mixed up message coming out of this finish.
Absolutely. The thought that I had was, this is a lazy finish, and it's just like, whatever, let's get to the next match. I think Asuka deserved better. I don't know. It's just one of those situations where WWE probably got caught in a trap wondering, okay, who do we put over? Let's just do a janky finish, and that's just what they did.
My whole thing is, why would you not put over your champion, though? Like,
right.
Nia Jax has really done little to nothing to really claim her spot in this women's division. She does nothing but injure and beat up other competitors, and she ends up really and truly hurting the roster because she doesn't get anybody over. The way she wrestles and the things that she does really and truly limits everybody else and usually puts them in a bad spot because they're so banged up. I mean, Kairi Sane's not wrestling right now for a reason. It's because she's got staples in her head because of Nia Jax. I don't understand the whole thing with giving her a push. If anything, she needs to be sent back down to developmental and be kept off TV. Braun Strowman ends up defeating Miz and John Morrison in a handicap match to retain his title. I think this says that we are headed towards a Braun Strowman and a returning Bray Wyatt feud coming up here very, very shortly. Drew McIntyre takes on Bobby Lashley and defeats him to retain his title, defeats him via pinfall. So in this match, this was probably one of Bobby Lashley's best matches that he has had in quite some time. Bobby Lashley looked like he earned this spot and he should have been taking on Drew McIntyre. After this match, did your opinion of Bobby Lashley change at all?
No, I always felt like he was main event status, and it took a while, and they probably sent him off course with some feuds that weren't worthy of his caliber, but what does everybody want to see? It's about time for WWE to put some investment into the feud that everybody wants to see. An extended feud for the second half of 2020, whenever that first show happens with fans back and asses in the seat, you gotta parade, especially with the news that we heard, you gotta parade Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley and let's have a main event feud and it'll be worth it, it'll draw. So for me, Bobby Lashley had a great match. I think it puts another notch in Drew McIntyre's belt, and all in all, it was a really highlight of a great pay-per-view in my mind. I thought it was a great match.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with what you just said, because everybody forever and a day now has wanted to see Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar. You need to build Bobby Lashley up to that main event status where he can go take on Brock Lesnar, and everybody's buying into the fact that he might beat Brock Lesnar, and maybe he does beat Brock Lesnar. But I think you're right. When we come around and we've got fans in the seats, I think we need to have an extended feud between Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar. The Street Profits and the Viking Raiders, they brawled across the Performance Center, and they ended up encountering ninjas. I didn't understand what the hell was going on with this. I don't know if you can explain this. I get that we're now going to have the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders. They seem like they're kind of a dual tag team taking on Akira Tozawa and his mystery man, but I just did not like this setup. Look, these guys have been going on and on for weeks. I feel like at some point we need to have a resolution to this, and then we can kind of move forward. I did not like the interfering ninjas, and then you got to follow up to the ninjas on Monday. So I just didn't understand this. I just didn't like it either. I don't know. It
Absolutely
frustrated me.
They went with comic relief, the Viking Prophets. I mean, come on. It's, whatever they decided to go with. It didn't hit for me either. It didn't register, and I just was like, whatever, let's pay this off. I just felt like WWE went in and tried to do something unique, but it just failed in my eyes. I think a lot of people, obviously you got to have some form of entertainment, some form of comedy. It just didn't hit for me. I didn't find it funny.
Now, for our main event, Randy Orton took on Edge and defeated Edge via pinfall. Was this the greatest wrestling match ever?
Absolutely not. And here's the drawback with this, is this billing is absolutely terrible. I think that it does a disservice to both Randy Orton and to Edge to put that kind of pressure. And here's the problem. 2 days prior, you had a 40-minute match that was going to be unbelievably challenging to live up to. AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan had an unbelievable match. Fast forward 48 hours, it was a great match with a bunch of false finishes, but unfortunately, with the age of the internet, we started hearing rumors of an injury to Edge, so it kind of lends credence to the fact that potentially Randy Orton was going to go over. The saving grace for me was the right guy went over. Absolutely perfect way to establish a guy that has been in the past a main event player, a guy that deserves to be a main event player now. It was a great match, and in the culmination, if Edge could remain healthy, you could have a trilogy and carry this on into a classic, maybe year-long feud. But with what happened, and we'll talk about it later, you recognize that Randy Orton now is going to need to go on to bigger and better things. And the next step up for Randy Orton is that championship opportunity, another one with Drew McIntyre, and you can have another classic feud. It was a good match. It was good. It was better than their WrestleMania match, which is all you could ask for. If this is the culmination of their feud for the next year, I'm okay with it. I thought the right guy won, but I think the billing was stupid. You should have just called it something else. Just call it another wrestling match, a culmination. But to call it the greatest wrestling match ever really did a disservice to these guys because they didn't live up to it.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, the right guy won here, and Randy Orton should have been the victor. It's unfortunate that we're going to talk about the injury that Edge sustained in the news and notes segment, but this definitely wasn't the greatest wrestling match ever, and to build this, like you said, basically 48 hours after what we had on SmackDown, that's going to be really tough to live up to because the guys who wrestled on Friday night put on a hell of a show. And to kind of segue into the predictions and then segue into the biggest topics and trends, Doc ended up getting 6 right on our predictions. Jock falls just short and only got 5 correct. Doc also picked up the AJ Styles point because he picked AJ Styles to win the Intercontinental Championship. So he grabs that bonus point from SmackDown on Friday. So Doc gets 2 points and takes a 5.5 to 4.5 point lead. You doubled up on me. And that brings us to how much did you really enjoy the AJ Styles versus Daniel Bryan Intercontinental Championship match on Friday's SmackDown?
Oh, man, great storytelling, great selling, great psychology, back and forth action. I was like, man, there's a couple of wrestlers that just have great chemistry. And, you just get excited for those moments where you're like, it's AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan. It's appointment viewing. You got to put your ass in front of the TV and watch it. So I got a chance to watch it, and you could tell these are 2 veterans that know how to tell a story, know how to pace a match. Now, what sucks is the commercials kept jacking it up a little bit with some of the flow. But once it picked up to the point where it hit that crescendo, AJ Styles got the victory, and it's the right guy. I mean, absolutely, it's great to see a guy that has the potential live up to it in WWE. This is one of the greatest wrestlers in the world, and he can have any kind of match with anybody. And the chemistry that he has with Daniel Bryan, we're going to see 2 to 3 more, baby, and it's going to be a great opportunity to sit back one day and go, man, I want to relive the 4 or 5 matches that AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan had in WWE. They were good, and it was just, he looked good with that belt. AJ Styles, unbelievable performer, and Daniel Bryan, the mark of a great wrestler is when you get defeated, you don't lose any luster, and that guy, man, he's destined for another good 5-year run. And AJ Styles, with whatever he's got left in the next 2 or 3 years, let's put him in big matches, man. Let's see some good stuff, man. It's a pleasure to watch. And I can't, like I said, he's giving me so many points. Just pick AJ Styles. Don't pick against AJ Styles. It's a great philosophy.
So tonight on SmackDown, I'm under the assumption that we will see AJ Styles. We'll probably get introduced to this new look Intercontinental Championship belt, maybe. Who knows? We'll see what happens there. But should Daniel Bryan stay his challenger, or should he be moving on to another opponent? And if he should be moving on, who do you want to see as that other opponent?
Ooh, what's next for Daniel Bryan? What a good question. Daniel Bryan, such a talented wrestler. I mean, don't you think he's due for a restart, like an opportunity to go maybe and do something else? I mean, what wrestler potentially on the next feud that would be great? I think to take these two characters to the next level, I think Daniel Bryan would work great with Sheamus. Another feud reliving the past from a couple of years back at WrestleMania. You could then put over Sheamus and then continue to figure out what you want to do with Daniel Bryan. But right now, you don't want to risk having Daniel Bryan get lost in the shuffle. But I just think, depending on his schedule and what he's got going on, he's kind of falling into that middle status at the moment where he's not lower end mid card, but he's right there in the mid card. I know it's not worth it to keep him there, but I'm not sure exactly what's the best feud for him. He doesn't need a title. I just think that he's been doing okay here and there with spot matches, but maybe continue to put over some of the young cats, maybe get into a bigger feud with someone who's ascending, but whoever they decide, it's going to be okay because Bryan always delivers.
I like the Sheamus pick. What do you think about for AJ Styles? Because you had Sami Zayn, who was stripped of his title because he couldn't attend because of things going on with the coronavirus. Should Sami Zayn, when he comes back, be AJ Styles' next big feud?
Nope. I think that's played out. I think you got a star that's kind of been brought back but has been relegated to tag team action. I think either The Miz or Morrison would be a great challenge for AJ Styles, maybe even Morrison, because of the fact they're similar ages, they've got experience, and they can play off of each other with some of the entertainment angle. But I think down that road, I would go down with The Miz, who's obviously had a lot of great opportunities for the IC belt. But number one, I think it should be either maybe done with a tournament style to determine number one contender, or a gauntlet, or however they've always established number ones in some weird way, or you give it to Morrison and establish it, say, hey, or AJ Styles, you could always do the open challenge and have some surprises. Maybe someone that could be coming new, Matt Riddle. Be nice, huh?
Ooh, yeah, there you go. Matt Riddle, maybe Daniel Bryan would be a great pairing as well. So I like that. There you go. Let's transition over to Monday Night Raw. And you talked about Randy Orton early on when we opened this podcast up. Is this the best Randy Orton at this phase of his career? Because he looks fantastic right now. He wanted to transition away from being a face character to a heel character, and he has leaned heavily into this heel character. And I think he is reveling in it, and I think he's doing a fantastic job getting whatever it is that they're giving him over. He basically has put Edge out of commission now, took out Christian, and it just seems like the Legend Killer is back to his legend-killing ways.
With the punt, boom! Kick to the face of Edge. Boom to the kick to the face with Christian. Of course, this is the best version because this is the aggressive. This is the nasty. This is the SOB that doesn't care. This is the SOB that talks shit when he defeats his opponent. Absolutely, this is a great character. This is the SOB that harkens back to his roots and uses Ric Flair to get over on Christian. That was awesome to see because you knew it was coming in some way or another with Ric Flair coming out and saying, don't do it, Christian, don't do it. And like we said last week, we were joking around that WWE should stop spending money on Ric Flair, but he got a contract, so his ass showed up on TV to deliver the nut shot to Christian. So that was great. Some people complain that you're wasting an appearance by Christian, but I think it was the best way to do it. Christian's 46 years old. He hasn't been in the ring that much. So to have it play out that way was a beautiful way to tie into the storyline that you got with Randy Orton as a nasty beast. And this is just a perfect way. This is Randy Orton. And in different careers, in the career path of these wrestlers, sometimes there's peaks and valleys. But right now, this peak for Randy Orton should pay off. And potentially, I would even say if there's going to be somebody to take the belt off of Drew and to have maybe a back and forth title reign, I give it to Randy Orton. I think he's the next guy in line. He looks like he's worthy of a title run with what he's got going on as a heel.
I would like Randy Orton to maybe get through another feud with somebody else before really challenging Drew McIntyre, just to kind of establish his badassery, if that's even a word. It is right now. So I would like that just to kind of get a little bit more of a build. And then, because Drew's doing a fantastic job holding that belt. And I don't really want to see Randy Orton knocked down a peg, and I don't want Drew to get knocked down a peg. I kind of want it to be one of those things where you get both of these guys at their highest of highs, and then they meet. You know what I'm saying?
WrestleMania down the road. Makes sense.
Oh, you know what? That would be such a long-term build. I don't know if WWE has the ability to do that, but that would be awesome. It really would, because you would allow Randy Orton enough time to really kind of fulfill what he's doing and fulfill all of that potential that he has as this new badass heel character. And you would really allow Drew McIntyre an extremely long run. You'd give him a year with the championship belt. And if that doesn't solidify you as a total badass for this company, I'm not 100% sure what else is. And then you meet at WrestleMania. Oh man, that would be fantastic. That, you know what? How do we not get put on creative, or how do you not get put on creative for WWE? You really should be.
Absolutely. Or if you want to keep delaying this feud with Brock Lesnar, then maybe Randy Orton gets the revenge on Brock Lesnar and gets over and builds up a nice SummerSlam rematch. You remember back in the day, a couple years back, where I believe it was Brock Lesnar who gave Randy Orton that vicious elbow, and boom, busted him wide open. I would say that's another opportunity too, if you want to go down that road. So if the new guy, who we'll talk about, the new guy in charge wants to listen and write the money-making angle, listen to the DOC and Adam Straczynski and make some new feuds that will make some money.
For sure. So what I want to do now is I want to table what you wanted to bring up from the Wednesday Night Wars. And I'd like to go into NXT, then move into AEW, and then circle back to the issue that you have with both NXT and AEW, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, watching NXT, I really felt like NXT was a little bit lackluster this week.
Absolutely. Yep.
I want to know what you thought was the most compelling and interesting story on NXT was, because right now, the Santos Escobar, El Fantasmo, with Raul Mendez and Joaquin Wilde versus Drake Maverick, I think is probably the most interesting story that they've got going on, as Escobar revealed himself last week, and Drake Maverick has had pretty much the entire NXT world behind him and pushing him. And now you've got this, it seems almost like it's a blood feud between these two guys, with Escobar having his backup in Mendoza and Wilde. Other than that, I don't know if that's your most interesting story. For you, that is for me. I'm not sure if there's something else that really has you drawn in and captivated right now.
Absolutely. You said it. You nailed it. Obviously, I want to see how Killian Cross emerges and what his next step is going to be, how he's going to be utilized, where he kind of takes the NXT universe and things like that. The thing that bothered me most was the arrival of Bayley and Sasha to NXT in the main event. It bothered me because of the fact that it took away from the fact that you got this new world champion, and Bayley and Sasha Banks are having this match, and it was a match with some young cat females, and the match was sloppy. It just was like move after move after move, and it seemed like, based on the difference in experience level, that Sasha and Bayley weren't putting in the right amount of effort. Maybe they were trying to think their way through with these rookies. The lack of chemistry in the main event wasn't that good. And then you have the champion come out acknowledging women from a different brand. So I just was like, you know what? The arrival of Bayley and Sasha just took away. And look, for me, it signaled, oh boy, we're not happy with the ratings. We need a boost. So we're going to put these women in, some established women, at the main event of NXT. And I just thought it took away, and I wasn't happy with it. I didn't like the match. I didn't like the setup. I didn't like the psychology. I was just thinking to myself, what is going on here? Something's wrong. Bayley and Sasha don't seem to be the same caliber on this show that they are on other shows. So it was disappointing. And I agree with you. The Escobar angle is the best outside of what they got with Killian Cross.
Yeah, I didn't really like seeing the Bayley-Sasha match. I didn't think it worked out well. It did seem like it was just kind of going through the motions. It seemed kind of flat, you know, and yeah. I think flat it might be the best way to also describe what we got on AEW Dynamite this week. Absolutely. I felt like both NXT and AEW kind of missed the mark. All of that being said, what has you most captivated? Because we are roughly, I think it's 2 weeks away from Fyter Fest approximately. So what has you most captivated as we are inching closer to Fyter Fest?
Obviously, I think the big feud that everyone's talking about is Cassidy versus Jericho. It's going to be a chance for Cassidy to get over, to establish himself as a star. What a perfect way to establish a star in Orange Cassidy, by putting him with Jericho. Or if you want to, continue Jericho as being a heel, you put him over in this scenario. But for me, I just felt like there was such a contrast in one match. The Starks-Cody match was so different than everything else. And my general complaint about both shows was it just seemed like in both shows it was like spot fest matches, match after match after match. And I was like, you know what? Outside of Starks and Cody Rhodes, this was like the same match over and over and over and over again. And I'm like, okay, spot, ending, spot, ending. And I'm like, wait a minute. Then you have this distinct match between Starks and Cody Rhodes where you got some intrigue. You got an intro from Arn Anderson. You got the backstory of this former NWA professional wrestler. He comes in, and the contrast of the experience with Cody, they were selling. They told a nice match. They were intrigued. The moves that were made, what Starks was able to do was unbelievable. And I was like, this is a good match. And it stood out from the rest of the matches where it just seemed like one aspect of wrestling has kind of taken a back seat. And that's the psychology. That's the selling. That's the slow down pace. I don't know if they're doing it for television. Look, if you look at the ratings while AEW is winning, they're only in the 650,000s. They're not crushing it in the ratings. And the part of it is that you're seeing the same match all night long. You know, it's like you got 5 matches, 4 of them are the same, and 1 is uniquely different. Now, you know, I know you're trying to keep people's audience, but professional wrestling has an art, and the art form that we're used to seeing in some great wrestling wasn't there this week, and it was noticeable outside of the Cody Rhodes match. I thought that was the best match of the week outside of AJ Styles. And so for me, AEW's got to do a better job because your ratings are beating your competition, but when both of you are not performing at the high level, you're only drawing 650,000 fans. You got to do better.
Yeah, I really felt like this week on Wednesday, you probably didn't have to tune in, which was a little bit frustrating because, you know, we both take quite a bit of time out to watch all of this. And there are 1,000,001 other things that you and I could be doing, but instead we're investing roughly 4 hours on a Wednesday night to 2 different programs. And then on top of that, we're investing 3 hours on a Monday night. And then we're investing 2 more hours on a Friday night. So depending on if you got a pay-per-view that week or not, I mean, you're looking at roughly, 9 hours plus a pay-per-view, maybe 14 hours of wrestling that we're watching and consuming, on top of putting all of this together to redistribute it. So you're right. At a certain point, you have to start giving a little bit more. You know, AEW was on fire, especially early on. The matches were great. The matches were crisp. I thought that a lot of the content we were getting was very, very good. And now it just kind of seems like we've kind of hit this lazy lull right now. And that's the best way I can put it. It seems like it's a lazy lull.
Lazy lull time, baby. Dark days of professional wrestling ahead of the COVID situation or whatever's going on. We'll talk about it. But, yeah, it wasn't that good. They got to step it up because, remember, you're only as good as your last show. And if that's what they put on tape for AEW and NXT, they got to step it up.
Yep. So what was your big issue between both of these? Was that it? Was it the fact that they both seem like they're kind of lackadaisical?
It seemed like they were identical. It seemed like the matches were all produced by the same person. It's like, go out there and give me 5 minutes of all your best stuff. There was not a lot of selling. There was not a lot of believability. There was not a lot of intrigue. Like I said, it was highlighted because of the fact that it was all kind of the same up until the Starks-Cody Rhodes match. And you saw that match where they were taking their time. They were telling a story. They were really selling moves. They were like slowing down. They weren't like going spot, commercial, spot. It was more of a unique type of presentation, and it stood out. And I'm like, what did I like about this match? I like the fact that you had the story of this old grizzled veteran against this young cat trying to make a name for himself, and then how excited Starks was when he was trying to get his way and towards the end there before he lost. So for me, it was just a different kind of match, and the rest of it was just like, what is this? It's just like kind of the same kind of match over and over and over again that you don't really have to care about. Like you said, you don't want to watch wrestling and be like, well, why'd I waste my time? Especially when you devote a couple hours to watching it. You want to feel like, okay, these guys are putting in work, and it felt like they just were kind of going through the motions. Yeah,
exactly. I agree with you 100%. It wasn't a great Wednesday night for wrestling. I thought Raw did a pretty good job. I thought SmackDown, especially the way it ended, was absolutely fantastic. Overall, I thought it was a good week of wrestling. It just kind of missed the mark for me.
Yeah, it could have been better in regards to the ending there for us, especially coming after a pay-per-view. Real quickly, Last Ride episode 4 was decent. You got to see The Undertaker kind of heading toward retirement and seeing what it's like to have a couple bad matches. And just watch that Last Ride. I can't wait to see episode 5 when it airs. And it was good after the pay-per-view to see it. So check it out. Last Ride, Undertaker, episode 4. It was really, really good. Now you're starting to see, if you check it out, he's making the rounds. Sam Roberts' podcast. He appeared on the WWE podcast. He's on The Bump. he's starting to kind of let loose after his 30-year career. The guy who lived this character is now talking and letting it out. So it's really cool to get some insights, some background stories and stuff like that. So really neat and interesting type of stuff. All right, cuz, hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What caught your attention?
So late last week, WWE reported that it has been revealed that Paul Heyman has been relieved of his creative role as the main producer for Raw, and they have given total creative control to Bruce Pritchard, who will be writing for both Raw and SmackDown now.
Screw you, you're fired. I can't believe it. Real quick, Gotti, we have to give an opinion on it. I think it's the wrong move to have the same guy write both shows. Look, man, it's not Paul Heyman's fault the ratings tanked. There's no freaking fans. You're missing a key element. To have Paul Heyman gone, I think you're missing out on a talent that has done a world of good for a lot of wrestlers. You saw a lot of good wrestlers get over in the last year or so. But it's just probably a job that I think a normal human can only last a year in, because you got to work with Vince, who's hyper controlling, who doesn't respect all the ideas all the time. So Bruce Pritchard's got the main job, but over under a year, I go under.
Yeah, I go under as well, too. Vince burns everybody out. Speaking of Vince, Talk Sports is currently reporting that Vince McMahon thinks Angel Garza could be the next Eddie Guerrero. This is high praise, as Guerrero remains one of the most popular and acclaimed superstars in WWE history. WWE has been searching for a Latin star to take the place of Rey Mysterio for years, and it seems like Garza might be the latest to be tasked with that role. Mustafa Ali will be wrestling on the Red brand now. He was moved over to Raw in exchange for AJ Styles, who was sent to SmackDown due to a disagreement with Paul Heyman. So that might have also played into Paul Heyman getting removed from his creative process. According to WrestlingNews.co, Apollo Crews is set to turn heel. It appears that he might turn heel and join MVP and Bobby Lashley as a stablemate. So watch for that. You kind of seen him use the rope to get a pinfall this week on Monday Night Raw, so don't be surprised if Apollo Crews ends up turning heel to join MVP and Bobby Lashley. Now, Drew McIntyre...
Wink, wink. Do you know the similarity that all those three guys have? Great, talented wrestlers.
That's right. So, Drew McIntyre recently revealed in a Sports Illustrated article that New Japan was the plan for him before Triple H made a call. He said, "Before Hunter called me back to WWE, the place I was going next was Japan. My style would be perfect there, and I could learn so much. The two opponents at the top of my list were Tanahashi and Okada. Ospreay would be great as well. I wrestled him outside of WWE in a couple of my favorite matches, but still, I would have to go with wrestling Tanahashi and Okada." Drew McIntyre in New Japan would have been super interesting. I'm glad he's in WWE because he looks really, really good as their champion, but I could have totally seen him in New Japan kicking ass. According to ESPN's Andrew Friedman, WWE has resumed tapings for Raw and NXT at the WWE Performance Center. This is after a member of WWE's developmental roster tested positive for the coronavirus. Vince McMahon will stop at nothing, even if it means your life, to get his tapings done. WWE has also confirmed that Edge has a torn tricep from his match with Randy Orton at Backlash. Now, the recovery on this is a very lengthy one, and it probably means that we're not going to see Edge come back in 2020. And sticking with injuries, but crossing over to AEW, Chris Statlander confirmed Sunday that she will undergo surgery after suffering a torn ACL. Mike Johnson had reported that Statlander injured her knee while hitting a tope suicida on Kip Sabian during a tag match on AEW's Dynamite last week. So that women's roster on AEW is coming up injured and lame, so it's getting thinned very, very quickly. And that's it for this week's wrestling news and notes, cuz.
Absolutely. Great week of wrestling. Follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Daily content. All you got to do is hit that subscribe button, and the daily content finds you. Search 3 words, Detroit Sports Podcast, and you'll never miss out on great internet quality sports shows here dedicated to Detroit and professional wrestling each and every Friday. Great podcast, sir. I look forward to another week. I can't wait till next week's broadcast where we hit on all the great wrestling news on the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.